Hello and welcome to another episode of Charles Weekly Party. I'm Charles, your host for today, and before I get started, let's roll the intro. Alright, so today, working on this on a Monday, although by the time you're listening to it, it'll probably be Tuesday. So, regardless of days, I'll just go ahead and say it. Right now, it's a pretty warm day, and I'm just going to note out that, unfortunately, in order to maintain the as minimal background noise as possible, I have to record this podcast in a room without air conditioning. So, for all of you summer lovers, I really do hope you're enjoying the weather right now. But if you're like me and you're a fan of cooler weather, then, well, enjoy the next couple of months. But as much as I'd like to talk about the weather and whatnot and how warm it is outside, I'm not here to talk today about the weather. Well, maybe the weather app. That got a little bit of a refresh, but I'll talk about that further on in the episode. But no, I'm here today to talk about Apple's WWDC 2021 keynote. So last year and again this year, Apple is offering their WWDC, which stands for the Worldwide Developers Conference, online, virtual-only format, and 100% free. So, thankfully, budget is not a constraint for attending this event. So, if you're able to and you're interested in, maybe you're interested in becoming a developer, or maybe you would like to attend one of these types of events, but weren't able to go in person for cost prohibition reasons, then you can attend this event without any problems. So, the big thing I'm going to start off with is the addition of SharePlay. So, SharePlay is actually 100% having to do with FaceTime, and what it allows you to do is, instead of the upgrades that they've made to FaceTime, instead of watching, maybe you're distance away from friends or family, but instead of watching something in person or in the same room, maybe distance or for other reasons you can't do that, then FaceTime is now offering a SharePlay, I shouldn't say now, it will be offering a SharePlay feature to be able to, I'm going to put this the best way I can, to be able to bring together other components of togetherness that we've been lacking over the last year. And what's special about SharePlay is that, unlike a normal screen sharing thing, I know AirPlay of on-device media works one way, but for some things, for SharePlay, so let's say, I think one of the examples they used in the keynote was using Disney Plus. SharePlay would allow you and someone else to both be watching that Disney Plus episode at the same time, live time. So if you're 30 minutes and 23 seconds into the movie, then people you're watching it with are also 30 minutes and 23 seconds into the movie. So you're all reacting at the same time. The other benefit to SharePlay is that instead of if you'd like to listen to music, I know if you're in the same room, or let's say you're working with a bunch of your friends on a project or something, if you're in the same room, then you can all make requests as to what goes on in that music, which you can't necessarily do online. I know there was one particular class where I was playing music, and I was able to get song requests, but I ended up having full control over it, and if people didn't like it, then that was up to them to have to mute their speakers or leave the call. So, being able to add that little bit of music in would be, or add music to the playlist, or if someone really does not want to hear something, or maybe they've heard the song too many times over the past couple of days, they can skip, add, and that's all communal. Although I will say that, to the best of my knowledge, that feature requires you to have, or everyone to have, Apple Music. So if you don't have Apple Music, then you can't do that. So here comes the fun part. There's a lot that was gone over in the event, and to be fair, it was an hour and 45-minute long event, if I remember correctly. And for obvious reasons, this podcast is not going to be quite that long. And for further obvious reasons, well, if you look at what I'm covering with the WWDC, if I go over everything that they went over in that keynote, well, we'd be here just as long, and you might as well listen to their version unless you want to hear my takes on it in the meantime. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to address what I found were the most important aspects of this keynote. And when I say important, I mean I'll really focus on the ones I find very important, but the ones I feel will be the biggest importance to most people, I think, will be the ones I focus on. So the biggest omission I'm saying right now that I'm going to make is that I will not be covering the upgrades to WatchOS. Well, I'll cover the important pieces minimally right now. They've added in additional, I think, a meditation app, an additional way of tracking your sleep patterns, and I think a mindfulness application to help you take a mental break a little bit more easily. So there's definitely more to WatchOS than just that, in the way of their upgrades. So if that really does interest you, by all means, please go for it. But as someone who does not own an Apple Watch, I'm not focused on that as much. However, I will focus on the iOS and iPadOS updates for their respective devices. And what's going to make this episode slightly interesting is that Apple is making a lot of updates that affect all three of the major operating systems, so iOS, iPadOS, and macOS. So a lot of these features that I'm mentioning in iOS and iPadOS will actually apply to Mac. So to try and streamline this, I'm going to go over the bits and pieces of the important component upgrades to iOS first, because most of the little feature updates will actually apply to iPadOS or not in the case of the wallet upgrades. And than the features to macOS that are upgraded. So bear with me. I promise it'll be a fun ride, but it'll be worth it. So I mentioned how SharePlay has been added to FaceTime. However, that's not the only thing that's changed about FaceTime. Coming soon, there will be an all-new grid view, which we're used to on several other video call applications. But there will also be a portrait mode that we're not used to on other applications, utilizing the sort of mindset of the computer that, while it's doing a portrait mode photo, to use that same sort of logic to apply to where's your face, where's your background, to put the focus on your face and not your background. Although I do believe that's able to be changed on a case-by-case basis. So maybe when you're calling your best friend, maybe there's no need to hide your background, but if you're FaceTiming your coworker, then you may want to mute that background. Another cute little addition is microphone modes. So what microphone modes are the ability to analyze what's going on with the audio that is being received. So I think that the choices you end up having are you can turn it off and have it as normal. You can have it voice focus, which means it looks at everything that it analyzes the audio, finds the bits that aren't your voice, and gets rid of them, and then just leaves your voice there. From the glimpse of that I got at the keynote, as with most sort of automated processes on that effect, it's not 100% perfect, so it's not a substitute for being in a soundproof environment. It'll help get rid of a bunch of distracting noise, especially if someone's operating a leaf blower in the background. You'll find your ups, you'll find your downs to using the microphone modes, the microphone mode of having voice isolation, which makes it sound like your voice is the only thing the microphone's picking up, which, having watched the keynote and seen their demonstration of it, seems a little bit lossy. So if your voice pitch happens to be close to that leaf blower, you'll lose that. It won't sound perfect, but from that same demonstration, in some cases it's better than nothing. Another little aspect of the microphone modes, they actually have wide spectrum noise. So that's something that you'd use if maybe you're trying to get the background noise, and that's part of the reason why you're FaceTiming. Maybe someone's at home sick in bed and they can't attend an event, but you go to that for them and they said, hey, can I just see what the heck's going on? Can't meet up with friends, or you FaceTime so that you and your friends who are able to go out can all go and talk with the person. The person can feel like they're participating even though they're not able to be there physically. And that's going to one of the whole things I think is a great advantage now that there'll be a great advantage of the post-COVID era, but we have yet to get there and see what happens. Anyway, getting back on topic, the last big update to FaceTime is that you will now be able to invite anyone, even people who don't have or who have Windows or Android devices. So let's say your parents don't have the latest and greatest, or don't have any Apple products. Maybe I know some people who are anti-Apple. I have some friends who don't own any Apple products. That's fine. You can now send them a FaceTime link, which will work in their either Chrome or Edge browser. And from there, they'll be able to join in to a FaceTime call with the same end-to-end encryption so that they're not missing out on your group FaceTime just because they're the only one in the group who doesn't have an Apple device, which I think is nice on Apple's part to be saying, hey, if you shouldn't necessarily be excluded because you're the one person out of a group of, let's say you have a friend group of 5 people, it will become advantageous if you're that one person who doesn't have an Apple product for one reason or another, and that's making it so that people can. It's a all-around win, I think, and they've added end-to-end encryption on that, so congratulations. It'll have the same security as if you were using an Apple device. And to show how the FaceTime updates affect or go across the versions, that those features will be present on iOS, iPadOS, and lastly, macOS. So, next thing for the operating systems is the addition of Shared With You. So, let's say you're using iMessage and you send someone a link, or you share a song or a podcast with someone. Maybe you're telling your friends about Charles' Weekly Party, sharing the podcast via iMessage. When you go and share that link to whichever media it is, in the future, with these operating system upgrades, when you go into the respective applications, so let's say you were to share Charles' Weekly Party with with a couple of your friends. With these upgrades, when they go into the podcasts application, there will be a Shared With You section that goes and shows you the recommendations that your friends gave you. And that will apply across a variety of different apps, including news. I think Apple TV would probably be included under that. What was it? Apple Music. And photos. So photos shared with you would actually appear in the photos piece as well. I think they said that there was some sorting that goes on to make sure that you can focus on the important photos and not just the funny pictures or screenshots. And that should be another across-the-board upgrade as well. A big one that caught my attention is the Focus edition. So what Focus will allow users to do is set allowed notifications based on a focus mode, and that would tailor app notifications based on the application they're coming from, and on those that support it, even the person it's coming from. So that would allow you to, let's say you have, what's the right mode for it? Let's say you have your work mode, your school mode, your family dinner mode, all that. So, and what the different modes would allow you to do during your work day or your school day, you can have that mode so that you're only getting notifications from school-related apps or school-related friends. So maybe your classmate sends you a message that would go through. But but let's say your mother just sends you a thing, or your kids send you something, it won't disturb you during the day unnecessarily. And you won't need to worry about checking that message from your You don't have to look at that message from your significant other to find out that it's just a funny joke that was heard throughout the day. And that gets tailored. And so during family dinner, you wouldn't hear from your colleagues at work or your buddy down the street, but your family group, you'd hear from. And you get the idea. There are some preset ones based on how you use your device, and you can create your own. And the other thing about this with the whole ecosystem is that if you do enable one of these focus modes, so you're not getting all of your notifications, in iMessage, the people who have you in iMessage will be able to see that. So let's say I'm in work and I have my work focus mode on. If my boss sends me something, I'll know. Otherwise, I wouldn't worry about it. But let's say something important happened, like I don't know. Let's say a medical emergency happened with someone in your immediate family, and someone else sends you a message about it, but you're in focus mode. Focus mode will appear on their screen so that they'll know you're in focus mode. So if you send a message, it'll be delivered quietly. But you can tap to override a message if it's urgent, letting someone know that they saw that you were. That way you know that they saw you were in focus mode, but found it important for you to have nonetheless. So that will not only be present across iOS, iPadOS, and macOS, it will also synchronize. So if you're in work mode, all of your devices are in work mode. If you're in school mode, all of your devices are in school mode. And if you're in family dinner mode, you don't have to worry about your family computer pinging just because, even though you took care of your iPhone. So the notifications, that I saw, it's a minor little change, but amazing nonetheless. Notifications have a new look to them. Not a big change, but just enough of one. So the app icon or the contact photo will be featured prominently on the left side of the notification, so that you can see at a glance who sent you something, so that you don't have to read further into the notification to find out. Which can be useful if a message came from someone who's sending you 100 messages a day of minimal importance. Assuming you're not using focus mode, of course. And the other little change with the notifications, besides just making contact photos or app photos or icons a little bit larger, is that you'll also have the notification summary. So that at a time that you decide on each day, you get a summary of the most important notifications that came in throughout the day. I think that's pretty cool, so that you can, at a glance, let's say when you're in that in-between stage, as you're heading out from work, but before you're actually starting your commute, maybe that's when you want to hear the summary of notifications, so that you know what to expect when you either get home or when you get on whatever other, or if you're on a transportation method that doesn't require your undivided attention. So if you're riding a train or a subway, obviously once you sit down in the subway there, you can focus on starting to reply to some of those notifications. And to the best of I know that's on iOS and iPadOS. I believe that's going over to macOS. I'm not entirely sure, but it would not surprise me at all. Safari will be getting a special new tab bar on iPhone. Right now I'm going to focus on the iPhone version of the upgrades. The upgrade to Safari gives it a new way so you can swipe through your tabs with the tab bar on the bottom, as well as adding in support for extensions. Don't know how this will look on. Wait, I think this piece is iPhone only. Yep. And you can also search the web using just your voice, which also pretty cool. Next, with the wallet upgrades, a lot of things have been added to the wallet app on iPhones. And this one is going to stick with iPhone specifically because those are the only ones with the full-featured wallet application. So you've been able to add your credit cards, transit cards, and rewards cards to your wallet before, but now there are other things that are being added as well. So your room key for certain hotels will be able to be added, as well as a key for your front door. And with the hotel example, that can be sent to you in such a way that you receive it before you can check in remotely, so that before you actually arrive to the hotel, you have your room key already on your iPhone or on your wrist if you have a Apple Watch. And the last thing that's being added, and most notable and possibly most controversial, is the ability to add your ID. So the way that was demonstrated to work is in participating states, you'd be able to scan your ID and add it to your wallet, so that for applications where you can use a digital ID, you can use that to, I think they said they're working with the TSA to go and make it so you can check in using your a virtual ID. So you can tap that and it will show you what information is being requested, and you can tap to share that info. I'm going to insert my personal feelings on that here, because that one I see having massive ups and downs. So obviously for some people that can be pretty convenient. You don't necessarily have to carry your ID around, and maybe places where you'd be less of a fan of carrying your ID around, that's where it could really come in handy. So flying in the US, for example, where you could use this across the board, that would work. However, adding your ID to something is also something that shouldn't necessarily be taken lightly, because you are adding a document that shows who you are and whatnot, but it's supposed to have, because of the way it's scanning, the same level of verification as if you were using your actual ID. So doing a little I don't know how it does it exactly, but it's supposed to, obviously it has to have some way of validating it to make sure that the trends are, I'm just going to call them TSA because I have the wrong acronym. I have the wrong words for the acronym in my head right now. So I don't know what states that will be available in, but for those that have it, here's where I can see it being useful. For something like what's the name for it? For certain places where you may or may not want to show every bit of information on your driver's license, or where that might not all be necessary, I could see this as being very useful to having to share minimal information. So maybe for someone, or maybe it's they're going into a store or something, instead of having to look at your ID, you could tap your ID piece, and you'll have a pop-up on screen saying, like to verify the information that's being asked is what do you call it? That it's just asking for your age. To say, hey, is this person above or below the legal age for consumption? And that could work out pretty well for that. Maybe save you from having to pull your ID out of your pocket, show it to the person, let them look at that, validate it, and then hand it back to you. You can handle that basically all with a tap. Presumably, because of the nature of that, I don't think it would be a worrisome feature that someone else would have another person's ID on their device, because, well, if you do try and verify that and it's not your I don't think it's going to be an issue, because I know I would not let any other person have my ID on their device. And for most other people, that would be the same sort of thing. Unless I was physically incapacitated, I would not. My ID is my ID. If anything, it'll sit on my device. It will not sit on anyone else's. But we'll see. Obviously, people could try and use it to get around things, but I don't think it's quite as likely. And quite obviously, if the TSA is doing it, then it has a level of validity to it. Now, do have to keep things moving, so there is the addition of live text, and that's an across-the-board upgrade to be able to analyze text and images. So maybe you see a product that you like in a display window, you can hold your camera up to it. You can either take a picture if let's say you're really in a rush, you just want to take a picture and then look at it later. You can analyze it or have it analyzed for text to say, okay, look up that text, and it can even do smart actions with it. So you can copy text that you see, maybe it's a school whiteboard, something you just don't have time to type in. You can copy and paste all of it into a document or an email. Or if, let's say, you see an interesting house, you take a picture of the real estate sign with the phone number in it, you can tap the phone number and have options to call it. And that was actually that was demonstrated on screen by I can't remember Craig. I can't remember his last name, but he demonstrated it by tapping the call piece, and he called some ice creamery, although whether or not that was an actual call has it's up to the viewer's opinion. I'm sure he ordered some ice cream from him afterwards anyway. And personally, I think that's a pretty cool feature to have and unlocks a lot of new possibilities. Next, Spotlight search is more advanced, adding more information about artists, about TV shows or movies, and even about your contacts. You start typing the name of your contact, you can see information, get the fast contact card for them, last messages or photos, and if they happen to be sharing their location with you, you'll be able to see that straight from Spotlight. Also, and the last things I want to glaze over talk about, I hope photo memories upgrades are coming to iPadOS, but the photo memories are now going to be interactive and allow you to enjoy music from Apple Music as well, and make adjustments to it on the fly without having to go through as many customization steps. And for the health application, they'll be adding trends and the ability for data sharing. So for the health app, You now have trends, which analyze, as the name would suggest, trends of your history, their health history, and you also have the ability for data sharing with either trusted family members or your doctor, and of course you can choose what information is being shared, and it'll tell you before you actually share what's being shared. Last big thing is the addition of the certain privacy features. So there will now be a privacy report similar to what we heard about with the Google I/O event about Android 12, as well as adding in a big change that I like about having Siri audio not leave the device. Over time, my biggest pet peeve with Siri is that I'm sending my voice data over to Apple. And for me, that has made it so I'm still slightly cautious as to what I ask Siri to do. So on a normal basis, I don't ask Siri to go and send messages or whatnot, because I don't want that all going in a voice message over to Apple, especially after that last fiasco that happened with them. But with the audio not leaving the device, there are two perks. A, it makes Siri faster because it's analyzing and sending figuring out what it needs to do on the device. And second thing is, because it's happening on the device, you don't need an internet connection just to use Siri. So in the middle of the woods, you can go and tell Siri to activate dark mode to fit in with the settings, or to wake me up tomorrow at whatever time you'd wake up. So they did have another thing about mail protections, but if that interests you, I'd suggest looking into it. Now for the fun pieces that are iPadOS only. First of which is multitasking, for which there will be a new menu. So you get, I think, 3 little dots at the top of each app. And when this upgrade actually comes out to be able to be used on primary devices, that's when I'll determine whether or not I really like the idea. So what it does is it allows you to multitask a little bit more easily, and previously you could only multitask with the apps, or your most recent apps on the dock there, which is why I ended up enabling the feature. It wasn't a feature. I didn't have the recently used prior to that, although I'm starting to find that a little bit more useful now. But now, instead of having to have the application either there or on your dock to be able to use for multitasking, you can do it with any application on the home screen. You also have a shelf to be able to view all open instances of an app, so when you go into Safari, you can see all your open Safari windows without having to dig around in App Switcher. And speaking of App Switcher, if you go into it, you can go and drag one application onto another to create a multitasking instance. Also, keyboard shortcuts will be more prevalent, so you can hold down the command key to find out all of the different shortcuts that you can use. Trying to move along because I'm looking at the time, and I do want to keep the episode to an hour or less. Widgets and the app library. So there was a big outcry when that widgets got added last time to iOS and iPadOS 14. But with iOS 14, you could add the widgets wherever you wanted, and you had an app library. But if you had an iPad, you got this little thing called Today View, which meant that you could see your widgets in one area on the main home screen only. And in more recent updates, now you can see 4 little applications on that screen. There, 4 prevalent ones. I take that back. Today View may have been added earlier than that. It may have been added with, what was it? iPadOS 13. So, not entirely sure. I'd have to go digging through to find it, but you get the basic idea. Being able to move them around on the screen and put them where you want allows for the creation of workspaces, which I'm looking forward to. Because right now, everything is the stuff I most importantly need is all on my home screen with my Today View. And then stuff I do have things sort of grouped on my screens, but they're a little bit jumbled. And for most of my stuff, allowing me to have my fun area, so my screen for stuff I'd like to do or leisure stuff, put social media or games there. Stuff I need for productivity, putting the important stuff there, and then anything I really need to be able to access quickly no matter where I am, straight on the dock. I think that'll be pretty cool. Last, on the iPadOS side, there's the addition of Quick Notes, which allows you to, as the name would suggest, take a quick note with your Apple Pencil or finger. Swift Playgrounds is coming to the iPad, where you'll be able to code Swift applications straight on your iPad. And last but not least with that, you can straight on the iPad submit your app to the App Store, which is amazing. And lastly, there's support for universal control, and I'll talk on that a little bit more later. And actually, that wasn't the last thing, but last and definitely not least is that translation is coming to the iPad, so you can translate things on the fly. I think, given that Siri will be working offline, this should be able to as well. I want to briefly touch on iCloud Plus before I go over to macOS. For those who have iCloud already, the paid versions of iCloud, you'll be getting these features at no additional cost. So, first and foremost is the Hide My Email feature, which allows you to create unique addresses that forward to your primary email address. So maybe you're on a website, but you don't want to actually give out your personal email. You can give out a unique email with a little note that will forward to your email, but redistribute it appropriately. And if you decide to, you can also delete each of those custom addresses. Private Relay is also being added for iCloud Plus, which works on most networks and separates certain bits of data. So let's say you're through different relays. So let's say, for example, the network that you're using, the IP address that you're using, the page you're requesting, gets sent to different data bits, get sent through 2 different relays, so that at no point is anyone getting the full picture of what you want to do. And if I remember, well, I don't remember correctly, so we're not going to go there. You can also, for everyone, they're adding 2 more features to your iCloud account. First is Apple ID recovery contacts, which doesn't give anyone access to your account, but let's say you're in a stuck spot and you need a 2-step verification code to be able to get into your account. I don't know, let's say you're on vacation, you forgot all your Apple devices. You can contact your trusted recovery person and say, hey, can I send you a code so I can get into my account? And you can send them a verification code that you can then use to get into your account. So just in case you happen to forget, I think it's forget your password, but if you're in a stuck spot, you can use that. And the other piece is digital legacy contacts, which allows you to designate a trusted person to be able to access your account after you die. And looking into it, the way that ends up working, whoever you trust enough, they can make a request to get into it, but in order for that to go through, they will need to submit a copy of your death certificate to prove that you've actually passed away before they give away that information. Now, for the grand finale, macOS Monterey, as created by their crack marketing team. So, going back to FaceTime, you can share your whole screen while you're still seeing faces on a FaceTime call, as well as having spatial audio support in FaceTime, which allows you to hear the voice coming from the direction that you see the voice on. So let's say you're on a FaceTime call with 2 other people. The person on the left will sound like their voice is coming from the left, and the person on the right will sound like their voice is coming from the right, which pretty cool. And of course it has SharePlay support, because why wouldn't it? And big thing on the SharePlay topic, not the biggest thing of the upgrade in my opinion, but AirPlay to Mac allows you to AirPlay content that you normally would be able to an Apple TV or other AirPlay supportive device. You can now get done on your Mac. So let's say you're looking at something on your iPhone, you can simply AirPlay that to your Mac without any problem. Shortcuts is being added to Mac, which is, I welcome you to fact check me on this, but the shortcuts on Mac, I think, is supposed to be a planned transition from the built-in Automator app, which most people probably haven't heard of, but is still there, and will improve over time to eventually take over everything that you can do on Automator right now, and then some. There are, as previously mentioned, many other features from iOS and iPadOS, but the biggest thing is the addition of universal control, which works on iPadOS and macOS devices. So in the demonstration, what ended up happening is you place an iPad right next to your Mac. That's you sit down on your Mac there, you move your mouse over to the side of the screen that your iPad's on. You keep on going past the end of the screen, you'll see a sort of link piece pop up to show, hey, this will link the cursor. And then keep moving it, and all of a sudden your Mac trackpad will be moving the cursor on your iPad. Let's say you're doing that on your MacBook. You can, and your MacBook's conveniently sitting next to the new iMac that you bought, because the Blueberry's back, why wouldn't you get one? So you could drag a file from the iPad through the MacBook to the iMac, straight across all 3 devices without a hitch, and I think that's pretty cool. Yet there are third-party tools that can do it right now, but those require setup and whatnot, where this just works if you have the appropriate operating systems installed without any extra hassle. So it's been jam-packed. Right now, I won't have the ability to test out these new macOS features because unfortunately my Mac is no longer supported for that. So until I get the chance to upgrade that, I'm behind on my upgrades to macOS. But I do hope you enjoyed this look at Apple's WWDC keynote. Hope you've enjoyed my thoughts on it. By all means, let me know what yours are, and you can do that by going to anchor.fm/CharlesWeeklyPart2, where you can leave a voice message. While you're there, you can also browse other or previous episodes, look at all the different platforms that you can listen to it on, as well as supporting the podcast. Also, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please, if you enjoyed it, leave a review. And if you want to see the action, you can always go on YouTube and actually watch me deliver my party. Although today's might be a little bit less fun because it's pretty warm. I know the temperature where I am right now has got to be at least 80 degrees. So make sure, I do hope you've enjoyed the episode. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And take care. I'd say this week, if you can and you're interested in it, by all means, try and attend some of the WWDC events. You can learn about different aspects of coding. It's free. There's no harm in trying it out. Maybe you weren't interested in it. Look at it, see. Maybe you'll find a new passion. So learn something new, have fun, and take care. I'm Charles. I'm signing off for the day.